Just a quick disclaimer, the content of this video contains strong language and disturbing scenarios which may be distressing to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. I do not own any of the following stories, but have been granted permission to use them by the original posters. When I was 13, I broke my leg in a nasty bicycle accident. I ended up in a plaster cast from my hip to my ankle for 8 weeks. As it was coming up to Christmas, my younger brother wanted to go to the theatre to see a Christmas show. I was 13, moody, and accompanied by a bright pink cast everywhere I went. I was not feeling it. My dad, never one for going to the theatre, offered to take me to pizza instead. It was a rare opportunity to spend time with my dad, who was often working very long hours. He worked as a police officer, which, at the time, I didn't really take an interest in what he did. We had a great evening at Pizza Hut, and we got back into the car to go home with full bellies and some leftover pizza. I remember babbling away to my dad as I had been the whole night, enthralled I had my dad's undivided attention. After a while, I noticed he wasn't really responding anymore. We were fairly near home, but still on main roads before we turned off towards our housing estate. At first I thought he'd just lost interest, but I glanced across and noticed he was permanently looking in the rearview mirror. I asked him what was up, and he said, "The car behind us has followed us all the way from Pizza Hut." I glanced behind and commented that we were still on main roads. I couldn't see that this was an unusual road for this guy to take. He said, "I need to see whether he is. I don't want to lead this guy to our house." I rolled my eyes. My dad was always paranoid about stuff like that. We couldn't even tell friends we were going on holiday because he was convinced the house would be broken into while we were away. We were coming up to a residential area before ours that I knew from doing a newspaper round. I suggested the street coming up on the left, as it looped around in a horseshoe shape through a housing estate and brings you back out onto the same main road we were on, just further up. Nobody would take this road to come out onto the main road again. My dad turned off, and so did the car. I will never forget that feeling. That sinking feeling as I watched the car sharply turn behind ours. The car placed its full beams on. I let out a gasp and looked at my dad. He'd gone into work mode. He had completely shut me out. We accelerated down the street, and as we came out to the main road, I saw there were many cars still on the main road. He pulled straight out, meaning the car coming on the main road needed to brake sharply and held down their horn at us. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, breathing deeply as my dad weaved in and out of lanes. A part of me was completely terrified, and a part of me was still convinced that this was not really happening, that he had exaggerated or mistaken this. He wasn't really following us. I dared to look in the side mirror and saw it was a different car behind us. I felt myself relax a little, then left at the coming roundabout, giving very little room to anyone and a few moments of holding my breath, thinking we were going to hear the sound of metal on metal. The street we had turned onto was slightly quieter than the road previous. I slowly glanced in the side mirror. It was a different car behind us. I sighed relief and thought this had really been my dad's imagination. Suddenly, the rearview mirror became completely illuminated again, and I awkwardly turned in my seat to see a car pull out sharply from behind the car behind us and pulling quickly behind ours again. I looked to my dad again. He grabbed his phone from his pocket and told me to call someone in particular on his phone and to put it on speaker. My hands were shaking. I could barely press the buttons. A cheerful voice answered, and before he could say anything else, my dad quickly summarized what had happened. There was a pause, and I could hear voices speaking in the background, radios beeping and answering through radios. My dad barked at me to keep naming the streets we were on to the guy on the phone, as my dad randomly turned down streets, trying to keep on main roads. I'm randomly calling names and trying to remember to say the direction we were heading. The car was so close behind us and completely blinding any view behind us. All I could think was, please don't hit us. If we crash, I cannot run. What the hell can I do? My leg had only just been plastered. I knew I stood no chance. I suddenly wondered if they were getting close enough to take a shot at us. This for me was unthinkable. It was England. That was not the norm. Why the hell would someone want to shoot at us? We continued to weave down streets and random turns as I was tossed around in the front seat, clutching onto the mobile in my trembling hands. The voice on the phone shouted, "Turn into the Tesco car park that's coming up on the left. We have 3 response vehicles coming from the other direction." My dad sharply turned into the car park, skipping the red light. I shut my eyes, again waiting for the sound of metal on metal. We swung into the near-empty car park, the car behind us in close pursuit. Blue lights surrounded our car from what felt like all directions. The sound of sirens was deafening. My dad got straight out of the car and ran behind it. I screamed, still thinking someone could have had a gun, and tried to look over my shoulder to see when my door swung open and a police officer was crouching into the car to help me get out. My arms were completely jelly. I could not even use the crutches to help me stand. Another police officer came, and between them they helped me as I hopped out the car and back to the police car. They were kind and tried to distract me as I was trying to see what was going on and where my dad was. I couldn't really see from my angle, and I also couldn't turn properly due to my leg. They did their best to reassure me, and one had clearly just been through the nearby McDonald's drive-thru and offered me his tea. I just sobbed, begging them to tell me what was going on. My dad, after some time, came over to the car and told them to take me back home. He had checked and my mum was back home with my brother. As the police car turned around in the car park, back towards the entrance, we could see the police surrounding the vehicle, and 3 men in what looked to be their late 20s were handcuffed leaning over the car whilst a sniffer dog and 2 police officers were taking things out the car, one of which was a baseball bat. When my dad got home later that night, I asked him what it was about. Who the hell were those men and why were they following us? He was very reluctant to tell me anything. He did admit it was because of him that they were following us. He explained that he was in a drugs team that dealt with, how I understand this as an adult, the interception of large shipments of drugs that were being transferred across the country, and sometimes people lost a lot of money when they were caught. I just stared at him. I had no idea what to say. He just shrugged and said, "Sometimes people get upset about that." So, dear drug lords who my father took your drugs money from, I'd rather not meet. Hey there, if you're listening to this, then thank you so much for watching this video to the end. Ended up being a short one this week because I'm super busy with uni work and hoping to pick up the slack a little bit more during the holidays. Thank you to everyone who's watched, liked and commented on my videos so far, and a big thank you to everyone who's subscribed. I appreciate all of you immensely. If you enjoy my videos and haven't done any of those things already, then please do. It really encourages me to keep making content. As always, if you have any suggestions on what you want me to cover next, or just want to get in touch, you can email me at malevolentyt@gmail.com or catch me on Twitter at malevolentyt. Thanks again guys, see you in the next one.